Welcome to Focus on the News. Today we have Scott Bennett with us. Scott is a former U.S. Army Psychological Operations Officer, worked with the State Department in counterterrorism. He is a former George Bush administration official. So, Scott, it's great to have you with us today. And
Senator, my pleasure.
we're going to talk a little bit about the journalist who was reporting on Ukrainian war crimes and how he was assassinated in St. Petersburg. So, what is your take on this?
Well, what we know so far is the Russian journalist is originally from Donbass, been reporting on the Ukrainian war crimes, if you will, the entire conflict and the nature of the conflict since 2014. Vladlen Tartarsky was his name. He was in St. Petersburg conducting an awards event with his fans or supporters, and a young woman named Daria Trepova walked up to him, and she had been attending events in the past, and she had given him at this particular event a statue, a little mini statue, which was actually a bomb filled in shrapnel, and the bomb off concussion and killed him and killed a variety of other people and wounded a lot of people, and that just happened yesterday. Now, what we found out so far today is that the young woman has been detained. She has been caught. Daria Trepova was her name, 26 years old. She was in an apartment belonging to a friend of her husband. She has admitted, actually, some very key pieces of information. She was admitting she was recruited by a man with ties to the Ukrainian Security Service, the SBU. And specifically, she's admitted that this attack to have been orchestrated by Roman Popkov, a former journalist with the MBKH, which apparently was a media outlet founded by exiled oligarch and staunch Kremlin critic Mikhail Khodorkovsky. Trepova was reported to have said Popkov, journalist, had taught her journalism, had been an instructor, I guess, of hers, but then asked her to do a task for a contact of his, quote unquote. And the Popkov contact was an SBU agent, but the Russian Interior Ministry published a video showing in which Trepova admitted to bringing the bomb camouflaged as a statuette to Tartarsky's meeting with his followers. In the footage, Trepova has also said she would explain later where she had obtained the figurine from. So what Trepova brought the statue to St. Petersburg in her car several days ago. She also claimed that her contacts tasked her with striking up a friendship with Tatarsky to later recruit him. She reportedly maintained that she was told the figurine contained a listening device. That Popkov was now working for former State Duma MP Ilya Ponomarev. Ponomarev, who currently resides in Ukraine, has repeatedly threatened to launch a terror campaign targeting Russian officials and anyone he deems to be supportive of Moscow's actions in Ukraine. So this is an ex-MP. Also, he claimed to have ties to what he called a guerrilla movement. Ponomarev previously alleged that his guerrilla movement was behind the high-profile murder of another Russian journalist, Daria Dugina, the daughter of Russian philosopher Alexander Dugin, who she was killed in her car. Tarsky, the journalist who was killed, his real name was Maxim Foreman, as a military blogger after he joined the Donbass militias in the wake of the Maidan coup in 2014. which everyone remembers. 14, the United States, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, Victoria Nuland, a whole assortment of colorful clowns, traitors, and despicable human beings went over and orchestrated the coup d'etat against President Yanukovych, overthrew the Ukrainian government, secured it as an American puppet vassal, right-wing takeover, militia groups who worship Bandera and were then burned down or burned and killed people in the Maidan building. And at that point, that eastern Ukraine and Crimea declared independence from Ukraine because of this coup d'etat that was orchestrated by the West. Now, no one reports that in mainstream media, but that's the real story of how this civil war started. The US and Britain, and specifically the Obama administration, went in and did a coup d'etat and overthrew the Ukrainian government and a color revolution. That set in motion a eastern parts of Ukraine because they were trying to outlaw Russian. And these areas only spoke Russian. It's been Russia for 500 years.
Yeah,
So that set in motion.
So Scott, it's interesting. Now, this war, this is Obama's war.
Yeah.
You know, President Obama gave the orders to overthrow the government of Ukraine. He authorized the CIA to go in, conduct a violent coup. We had Victoria Nuland, senior State Department official, literally on the ground, talking with President Yanukovych, who was the duly elected president of Ukraine. And at the same time, she was intercepted, her phone calls intercepted, where she was literally deciding which ministers she would put into which departments of government, even before the old president had fled the country. And yeah, you mentioned the violence of the coup. I remember there was a very dramatic photograph on the front page of the Washington Post. It was a color photograph, and what had happened is the revolutionaries who were overthrowing the government were right up to the I don't know whether it was the parliament or the presidential palace or what, but they had actually dug into the ground a pit, and they created a fighting position, and they had overhead cover, they had timbers and so forth, and inside they had stacked up Molotov cocktails, these gasoline bombs that they would throw. And one of them he stepped back to where he got out from under the overhead cover, and he hurled the gasoline bomb. And what made the photograph so dramatic is that perhaps the Post had somebody literally in the bunker with him, or maybe but in any event, there was a photo taken, and the fellow who throwing the Molotov cocktail missed. He hit the overhead cover. The bomb exploded inside the bunker. And so you had this very dramatic picture of flames bursting out, people in flames. And these were the peaceful demonstrators who were portrayed in the media as somehow, you know, they had some excuse for why they needed to overthrow the government. And there was violence unleashed against Russian-speaking people all over the country. And in Odessa, the major port city on the Black Sea, the sort of the Nazi element within the revolution surrounded a large building where some of the the pro-government protesters. They were supporting the elected president against the revolution, and they surrounded them. I think there were 40 some, and once they surrounded them with all the mob, they torched the building. They burned all of these people alive. One man leaped from I think it was the second story. He leaped, he broke his leg when he hit, and the mob attacked him and just beat him to death. And so, it's a funny thing. We talk about the American Revolution. I think we have forgotten the American Revolution. We supposedly conducted this revolution because we thought that some relatively minor taxes were unfair and that it just wasn't the right way to impose taxes. And so we overthrew the crown. Well, if you think of the justification that the Russian-speaking elements in Ukraine had for declaring their independence, they had 100 times the excuse that our colonies had, because literally they were being told, you're going to be a second-class citizen if you don't start speaking a language you don't know.
Yeah.
And if you defend the government that has that was elected by all the people of Ukraine, if you defend it, we're going to burn you to death and we're going to beat you to death. And so the Donbass republics and the Crimea had abundant reason to declare independence. And that was the beginning of the war. Russia coming across the border didn't begin the war. The war began when this new regime established by Victoria Nuland and the Central Intelligence Agency was then armed massively by Barack Obama. They created this huge force, considerably larger than the Russian army. Russian army was more or less a home guard. It wasn't an expeditionary force that went out into the world and conquered other countries. It defended the borders of Russia, and Russia was forced into crossing the border in order to relieve pressure from the Donbass, which was about to be overwhelmed by a massive attack by the Ukrainian army. So, Americans have been so deceived by the State Department, the CIA, all of these agencies, that American people, unfortunately, don't understand the origins of the war. But it is interesting that this woman has been captured. And you mentioned before the SBU. What is the SBU?
I think that is the acronym is for a guerrilla group, SBU agent.
Is that
it's some acronym for an intelligence agency within Ukraine.
Yes. Okay. That was sort of my point, is that the acronym is not terribly important, but Ukrainian intelligence was involved in this assassination, just as it was in the assassination a couple of months ago. And and I suspect that they coordinated with the Central Intelligence Agency on the targeting. We've been involved. We targeted 13 Russian generals early in the war using our satellite intelligence, CIA intelligence, targeted them for assassination and worked with the Ukrainians. And I don't know whether the CIA pulled the trigger or whether whether Ukrainians pulled the trigger. But anyway, these people were methodically assassinated.
Yeah.
And so it's a very sinister, dark force that's underway. And you know, at the beginning of the war, the head of British intelligence, MI6, said that we are fighting this war for Western values, especially LGBT.
Wow.
So we are slaughtering hundreds of thousands of people just in this massive bloodbath, especially to advance sodomy across the globe.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really, to me, that is an astounding spiritual revelation constantly when I can analyze this whole LGBT homosexual agenda that has been manifesting in policy emanating outside the United States, as if they're trying to infect this poisonous insanity through the syringe of military diplomat interventionism. They're trying to infect other nations with this sickness, and are rejecting. Africa's rejecting it. Russia originally rejected it. Yanukovych rejected it, saying the Christians, we are not going to embrace the homosexual agenda of the European Union or the United States. So for us to constantly be doing this shows me, Senator, God is bringing us a spiritual darkness on this land. He is bringing vengeance, and and the revelation that when God says, "Vengeance is mine; I shall repay." I see all of the wickedness, evil, the death, and the destruction that we've unleashed upon the world since 9/11 in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya. I see the punishment for that. God hates innocent blood. He's visiting upon this nation the Sodom and Gomorrah darkness and the insanity, and we are being devoured by our own wickedness. I mean, it's right out of a story. Our own country is dissolving into this civil war, and you have conservative you Christians, and we're just sitting back looking. This is truly amazing. But yet we have military, political, and media figures that are oblivious, that have no understanding ever. That tells me they've been given over to strong delusion to believe a lie by God. They've had their conscience seared by a hot iron. And I can't see the country maintaining its integrity as a national republic, as a unified country. I can't see that lasting very much longer. In fact, I already think it's quietly and invisibly civil war, many civil wars and separation. DeSantis saying, no, we're not going to participate in your false Soros orchestrated prosecution of Trump. We're not going to participate. And he could have went farther and said, if any of your agents come into the state of Florida, I will arrest them. I think there are more things like this to come in America because of the things that we've sown.
Yeah, Scott, there was a very interesting interview. It was a CBS 60 Minutes interview with Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she was, you know, the interviewer was trying to trip her up, trying to, you know, cause her to make some stumble. And I'll tell you, this is not a lady that is rattled by anything. And the interviewer said, "Well, you know, how outrageous you have said that that the Democratic Party is supporting pedophiles in the schools." And I mean, hello, open your eyes. I mean, we have these national school unions, and even though we have 50 states and 50 state departments of education, effectively we have a national school system wired together by these national radical Marxist sexually deviant unions, and
Yeah.
and to try to pretend that the Democratic Party in the United States does not support pedophilia in the public school. My goodness, this book, uh, which is Gender Queer. Gender Queer has, comic book style drawings, and there is a drawing of a boy on his knees in front of a bearded man, and you can literally see where the man's penis is and where the boy's face is and where his mouth is. It is revolting. Now, I'm going to tell you, I spent many, many years as a senior Army judge advocate officer, and I was 3 times a staff judge advocate, which is the equivalent of a U.S. attorney in the military jurisdiction. And I eventually was the chief of the criminal law division at the Pentagon. Now, I will tell you, back in those days, this goes back before the 90s. If you had accused someone, or if you had charged them with indecent liberties with a minor, which was a felony, a very serious felony, and you had shown to the jury this particular picture out of Gender Queer, a book that, by the way, is in schools all over the country, you could have secured a conviction, and that conviction would have withstood appeal through the military appellate courts, and all the way to the Court of Military Appeals, which is the equivalent of a U.S. Circuit Court. And had it been appealed to the Supreme Court, it would have withstood scrutiny at the U.S. Supreme Court. Today, this same image that we provide to little children in our public schools is promoted. I think they gave a Pulitzer Prize, or I don't know, some crazy prize to this sex deviant who drew these things. And the idea that somehow you'd have a journalist for CBS seeming shocked and appalled by the fact that Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene would dare to accuse Democrats of advancing pedophilia in the public schools. It sort of defies logic and common sense that people do not understand. This is pedophilia. That is one of the key objectives of the nationalized school system. And it's just the fact that parents have awakened and they're pushing back very hard, which is encouraging. But there's no doubt that this push for homosexuality is one of the motivating factors in our foreign policy. You had Barack Obama actually put rainbow images on the White House, where the whole White House was bathed in rainbow colors to celebrate homosexual pride. And then we required our embassies around the world to fly the rainbow sodomy flag. We did it in Afghanistan. We actually flew the rainbow sodomy flag, and I'm sure that that helped us to win the hearts and minds of people who who seem to be a little more realistic about homosexuality than we are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I said that way back in 2011. I wrote a report to the Army saying this Obama policy of homosexualizing the military is going to result in a massive departure from from our force of the brightest, special forces, SEALs, Marines. I mean, the best of our forces were going to leave. They were not going to be part of something that was contradictory to their moral values. And most of the soldiers and the forces guys, these are from traditional family values homes and states in the Midwest and the South. And I've seen exactly what happened, what I predicted, a massive departure, and we're at all-time recruitment level lows. We also see another plague coming, transgender surgeries. Now, this to me really is a of children to the Moloch or Baal or any of these godless demon figurines, if you will, these demons that we're worshiping in America, to sacrifice children under the age of 18. I mean, it's painful to even mention this. There are lunatic, garbage-faced Democrat parents, divorced mothers mostly, but also weak men, who are turning over their daughters and their sons, the daughters to have their breasts removed and to take hormone therapy, puberty blockers. And these young girls are between 14 and 18. Storms of puberty, which every young person goes through, and they understand it's like a roller coaster. Your body is filled with hormones, you're growing in spurts, you've got blemishes because of the oil. Your body goes through a tumultuous change. It is not sexual reorientation, as if you need to quickly jump into a gender reassignment clinic in a hospital, permanently cut off your breast, cut off your penis, or do other things to your body in pursuit of political agenda of LGBT homosexualization of the culture. This is truly remarkable that we have a culture and a people that even tolerate this, Senator. I am amazed that the people who push this, the signs of people who push this, these protecting trans kids or their demonstrations or any public exhibition in support of this, I'm surprised that all those people aren't killed, aren't burned, aren't thrown off the by decent parents reckon what this is. Now, I'm not advocating for that, of course, but I'm honestly just amazed that we don't have the visceral reaction to an agenda to castrate and destroy your young people, that many are now coming out, and as the storms of puberty kind of subside or they grow older, they recognize they've been lured and coerced, politically seduced into making the most drastic self-destruction choice of their lives. And you talk, taking vengeance and acting out all sorts of potential violence. This is the next stage of this. It has said this wokeism, this transgender LGBT wokeism, identity. So, again, I'm watching America and I'm just saying to myself, my God, this has to be a biblical curse upon this country for people to, of course, pray for. If my people who are called by my name will pray and turn from their wicked ways, I'll hear their voice and heal their land. That's the only solution. But at the same time, opposing by all means these sort of fanatical, suicidal ideologies from coming in and touching your children in school. And the churches, the pastors should be the first ones up talking about this.
Yeah, we definitely need to activate the churches, and but we've got a long ways to go. I think it's important for Americans to realize that to a significant extent, this war is motivated by the desire to impose Western deviant, sexually deviant values on the world.
Yes.
And I don't think taxpayers realize where their money is going and how little interest these global oligarchs have in the American people, their welfare, their well-being. Some of these global oligarchs are very powerful, very wealthy. They're the heads of great banking enterprises in Europe and in the United States. Um, and they, they have contempt for ordinary people and their values. We're the people clinging to our guns and our Bibles that Obama sneered at when he was the president. So, well, we will see where this all leads. Scott, I want to thank you for being here today. We will sign off tonight, but in any event, we look forward to having you back in the future.
Thank you, great one.